That's just pathetic. No. We're gonna redo that. 3, 2, 1, right? Is that how it goes? Welcome to the Zachrilege cast. I'm actually surprised I did that correctly last week, the week before. Yeah, that's about how it goes. Like, I forget that I have my earbuds in, so I can't hear it, and then the audio's low, and then when I actually play it, it replays automatically, which doesn't happen every time with YouTube, but you just never know. So I'm actually recording this, trying to do it on my Facebook page and StreamYard, and it's possible that Chris Genie may be in the room. We'll find out. But anyway, this is going to be kind of a combination of what I usually do for pre-show and then what I do during the show. So the first mistake I made was pouring myself some water, which we all know is just a waste of liquid, right? So we have a new refrigerator, and that refrigerator filters water. So the old water pitcher we have doesn't really need to be here anymore. So I decided I'm just going to put it in the office. We have a little single bed over here that has been slept in, I think, twice ever, and almost never by cats. And I refilled the pitcher, and it takes time for it to all settle in and filter. And I put it close to the edge of the bed. I filled this thing full of water. And then about 15 seconds later, the entire pitcher came crashing down to the floor. And so I needed about 4 towels to soak up the water. And in fact, my wife was downstairs and said, "I got my hair water coming down the house." I'm like, great. So I just ruined our house trying to hydrate myself, which is the worst mistake. So I think the number 2 show mistake I ever had was I actually used that beer thing over there. It has let me point my finger. There we go. It has a beer opener on it, and I had a Bourbon County Stout, which I think was like the only one I had that year. And I was like, I'm going to open it to christen this beer thing. And it exploded all over the room. On camera, live. It's on a Facebook Live video somewhere. I know I got a question. No, this is not the official man cave is downstairs. This is the Zach office, which I need to invest some time into figuring out how to do Zoom backgrounds like somebody else here. And yeah. Anyway, so I was going to open a beer that I bought this kind of on a whim. And tonight I'm going to do kind of a combination. I was going to do like a weekly beer thing on my site, and I decided to just combine it with tonight's show. We'll see if anybody wants to join me and actually talk to me live, or I'm just going to be talking to myself tonight. So far, we're leaning toward the talking to self. This is one of the worst beer concepts that exists. The whole wax thing. Like, it is so hard to remove, and I guess it helps if you're aging or cellaring beer, and we know how Chris and I are with cellaring beer. Yeah, 24 hours, that's about a max. Anyway, so I bought this beer on a whim from Wrecking Bar, which is a brew pub in town. And I'll put there we go, camera. Collins Wee Heavy Scotch Ale. I've been drinking a lot of Scottish ales lately. Especially if they're barrel aged, right, Chris? And I bought this on a whim. It's a style I like. And then the first one I had, I really didn't enjoy, but I figured, what the heck? It's Thursday night. This is the last kind of quote unquote special bottle I have. You might as well make all your. Yeah, Terrapin does a lot of interesting beers I can find in Tennessee, and they actually had a sale online on their. They had like a salted caramel porter a couple years ago that I really liked, and I found on sale, and they were selling them all cheap. But I was like, yeah, I'm not going to any breweries right now. I mean, it's all what is it? Fake news. But, all those people dying aren't real. ABV, this one's not so bad, considering I've been drinking lately. And 9.5, I mean, come on. That's barely water, right? It's just similar to what I've been having already. It is such a pain in the ass. And then I'll just... Because I don't know what it is. I like the Scottish ale. There's a little bit of like peatiness to it. It has peat in it. And this one just has a little bit of an aftertaste. It reminds me a little bit of that Eschaton barrel aged I had a couple weeks ago, where the barrel aged quad ended up tasting a little bit like soy sauce. And I don't know, soy sauce and beer. I mean, I'm gonna do my beer trio of the week, and eventually we'll probably get a beer that's like aged in soy sauce. So it's not, especially considering what I paid for this bottle. It's like, come on, it was not my favorite. Actually tastes a little better than the first time I had it. I'm just calling up the pictures I have on my phone for these other beers I'm going to have. So, beer temperature. This just came out of the beer fridge. It's currently at a 51. So usually when you take a beer out of the fridge and it's like barrel aged or a stout, Chris doesn't do this, I guarantee. You're supposed to let it sit for about 20 minutes before you drink it to get it up to kind of room temperature. This one's a little warmer than coming straight out of my fridge. My fridge has a digital readout now, so it's like 37 degrees. So anything coming out of that, if you want ice cold, you're hitting it perfectly. So 52 maybe. So I figured I'd start with my beers of the week. So let's go with, we'll start with a weird beer. So this is something I saw earlier today from Intuition Ale Works. It's called the Graham Boat. It's a combination of John Boat English Golden Ale and Golden Grahams cereal. So imagine, a golden ale is kind of as neutral a beer. It's like the amber ale that Bryce Blankenagel calls the one true beer. It's kind of a neutral, doesn't have a ton of pep to it either way, and then mix it in with a bunch of sugary cereal, and that's what you get. And so the expensive beer, this is not as expensive as the last week's, but it's expensive. It's kind of a expensive and extensive number of ingredients is very important to this beer. So here we go. So whiskey barrel aged imperial stout. This is called Threshold of Gravity from Six Bridges Brewing, which is a local brewery. I actually visited it a few months ago with a friend of mine, actually 2 jobs ago. Yeah. Copious amounts of warming cinnamon, so I'm out. Madagascar vanilla beans, cocoa nibs, and just the right amount of heat from organic habaneros. They are, I didn't see if they're cage-free habaneros, are added to keep things interesting. Available in 500 milliliter bottles. This is a $12, this size beer. I think this one was 15 for me, so 12. So, not quite an ounce. What is it, $1 an ounce, which is the high end. And then the last one, so I want to do a weird beer of a week, an expensive beer. And then I realized, unfortunately, Deborah is not in the room, but hopefully she'll be listening to this later. I decided to add a beer to my weekly beers. This is the IPA of the week. So this is Big Slurp Holiday Imperial IPA from Wrecking Bar, which is the same brewery as this beer I'm drinking right now. 104 IBUs. That's the bitterness quotient in a beer. And I'm going to see if the beer I have has that on there. The lower the better, and as far as I'm concerned with bitterness. There was a time that if I would drink an IPA, I would go for the most bitter, just hop slap to the face. And then after a while I go, oh, I don't actually like that. Maybe I shouldn't drink something, I should at least enjoy the taste, right? Or it should be boozy as hell. Now, this is boozy as hell. It's like a 10% double IPA, hopped with Chinook, Centennial, Eureka, and Mosaic. This beer is grounded with grapefruit and resin, so it tastes like a Christmas tree, but pops with fruit and melon notes. All at once hoppy and malty, this beer is a celebration of balance. So if I had this beer, how can it be balanced if it's 104? Like, I think 30 IBUs is high. If you see that on the side of a beer. Most beers I have are in the 20 to 0 range. Yeah. Anyway, so those are beers of the week. Deborah, I probably will not be picking up that IPA. I've decided, because America's pretty much given up on caring about people dying of COVID, that I am trying to limit my liquor store trips, and most likely I might be doing contactless in the future. I made a pretty big purchase 3 weeks ago and then again last week. So I feel like I should be probably good through the end of December, but you get itchy. Like, you have the same stuff over and over again. You want to try something different. You gotta be smart like Chris and have like 7 different beers. You buy the singles. If you can get singles at a store, it's a pretty good thing, especially if you're trying something new. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to slide over to Facebook to see if anybody's actually... Oh, Chris says fancy. Yeah, I am wearing my Dragon's Milk shirt, so I probably should be drinking a Dragon's Milk, but I don't have one right now. This, not terrible. I like that, to hear the sound. This is... This will be me doing an impersonation of my first podcast ever in Barroom. I just kept putting I had an even more Jesus bomber, and I have little towels now on my table, and I was just pounding that thing down, and Bill actually replayed it and played all the audio of me slamming my beer down on the table, because I had no idea, because I was a young buck, and now after 5 years of this, I'm same buck. So I don't know. Anybody got any interesting questions? Last night I started checking out a YouTube channel that was all about alternate history, but I don't know if people are as interested in alternate history as I am. I really like the concept of like one thing changing from history. And it was interesting to check out this channel, because he had an episode where it was like, thanks for having 2,000 followers, and now they have like 2 million followers, which is just crazy. And that's where the host gets to do the kind of awkward product placement in the middle. And if you're doing a YouTube video, it has to stop at the most inconvenient place like 4 times. Oh yeah, the monkey hat. Yeah, I should really bring that back. That was trendy. I remember I was wearing that. I wore that to the 2 Reason Cons at least once or twice when I was there. It was kind of a trademark, and then I was just like, that hat's hot. And actually, I've had that hat for like 5 years, 10 years. It's crazy. We even got little tiny cat versions of those hats, but our cats absolutely despise wearing any kind of clothes. But what was it? There's the very basic, what if the Nazis won World War II? What if the South won the Civil War? And they actually did like a 4-part series with 2 different channels where they covered the Harry Turtledove. Alternate history. Harry Turtledove just cranks the stuff out. I don't even know if he writes it anymore. But his first book was about South Africans who figured out time travel somehow in the 1980s and went back and basically brought a bunch of MREs and a bunch of weapons and helped the South win. And then the South basically overthrew the South Africans and took over. And then they made General Lee a much nicer guy, because he ended up being president of the South. And he's like, oh, we'll get rid of slavery because that sounds cool. But he wrote a 9-book series about, so one reason that the North was able to stop the South and the South invaded, which was, Gettysburg was part of it, was that one of the scouts who was supposed to give the battle plans to one of the generals rolled it up in a cigar, and someone in the North found it and found out their plans and was able to stop them. So they make the one change. That's what alternate history is supposed to be, one change. The one change was that didn't happen. The South wins. Abraham Lincoln gets kicked out of office and, funnily enough, starts the Socialist Party in America that, bears fruit over many, many years. And then it ends up being that the South and the North keep fighting each other, and World War I includes the South and the North fighting again, and the North finally wins. And then World War II involves a Hitler-esque guy taking over in the South, and their version of Holocaust involves black people. And then in the end of the book, the North ends up winning, and it's like, what could change? You can think about that in your own life, like one thing that would change and your life would have been different. The first alternate history book I ever read was called Replay, and actually was set in Atlanta. And it was about a guy who's like in his 50s, kind of overweight, working at a radio station. This book was set in the 80s, so that's a legitimate job. And he has a heart attack, and then he goes back, and he is in college in the 60s. And he realizes that he knows everything that's going to happen. So he becomes like one of the richest people in the world, and he thinks that's going to bring him happiness, and it doesn't really work out. And then at the point in history where he thinks, okay, let's see if I get past the time I was at before, he has another heart attack and goes back. And he just keeps reliving his life, although it's a shorter time every time. And he actually meets a woman who also travels through time. And it's a really good book. I've read it like 3 times. It just, you're able to, like, in a way, you think, oh, I know it's going to happen, so I'm going to change history. And it doesn't always work that way, which is, of course, some of the best like fiction that's out there. But yeah, it's good. I did just download a book, David Fitzgerald, who I had on about all the historicity. Don't say that after a beer. Of Jesus books. It's called Time Shards. And it's about like time basically just randomly different parts of different time periods somehow coming together at once, which is a crazy concept. So I'd be intrigued to see how he actually pulls it off. I just was kind of like, I don't know what I want to read. I'm really behind. My wife has read like 70 plus books this year. And I've actually read 50 some. So I'm actually ahead of my pace from last year, but she just reads a lot. Although she is trying to read War and Peace right now. And that one's like 1,400 pages. So it takes a while. I mean, I should get extra credit because I read the audiobook of The Stand, which was like 50 hours. That's like 3 to 4 audiobooks. And I can't remember the history book I read that it was like 45. And you have 21 days with the audiobook from the library, so you have to listen really quickly. So I got through that. I was kind of surprised. I didn't think I was going to. Replay is the name of the book. But yeah, I've read a lot. I just don't sometimes think that I'm keeping. Yeah. I was just wondering, I was like asking her last night, like, so were the Russians the ones that were like, hey, let's make a novel, but 1,000 pages? Because I was wondering if that was, people having like leisure time to read hasn't really been something that's been a thing for people until fairly recently. So the concept of reading a book that long, and I actually bought my mom a Russian DVD because they did a version of War and Peace, and there's a big battle scene in that. And they had actually like 100,000 extras, like the most people in a movie scene ever. I think it was one of the most expensive movies ever in Russian. So I think she really, really enjoyed that. I was just looking at my texts. Families talking about football games next year. Like, if the vaccine works out, we got this. We're all good. But there was a I haven't been listening to a lot of atheist podcasts. I tend to start listening to Scathing Atheist, and it always tends to be kind of like well produced, but always similar content from week to week. It's just, depends on what they have. But there was an episode of that Preet show, the one Deborah talked about, and I think Jeannie posted, which had a really good nuanced discussion of like history. He had on a woman who talked about how she was very much against us having like Confederate statues, but then being very against the idea of us taking down statues of people who are racist, because it's like, who wasn't racist? Who was a, quote unquote important person in American history until, well, maybe 50 years in the future? Preet, the guy got fired by Trump. I know that's a long list. Preet Bharara, is that his name? I'm surprised he isn't. Is he going to get hired by Joe Biden? They're getting hired by Joe Biden in our shadow government because we don't know what the hell's going on. Because, I mean, that's got to be tough because Deborah likes to pay attention to legal stuff. And just the lawsuits that have been coming out lately sound like the worst kind of stuff that would have gotten you kicked out of any law school. But they're getting so much attention. I mean, the normalization of just the craziest shit has been it's not even amazing anymore. We're already, we don't have feelings toward that anymore, I think I'm actually somehow playing, it's on the headphones that I'm wearing right now. How's that happening? It's tough because we bought these. And by the way, I like to ramble. We bought these noise canceling headphones because we had our kitchen being worked on and it was loud at times, and we were both working full time, which was tough. So I have these things on like a lot still, and I'll have to flip between having these headphones and regular headphones because I want to run with these because they get really sweaty. Come back to us, Preet. I mean, there's gotta be thousands and thousands of public employees who have left the government who thought, I'm going to do something good for America. And just because our president is such a fucking criminal, they just left. And will people come back? That is really intriguing. And now I have to remember, noise canceling headphones. Anyway, to connect this to my phone always is a thing. And then I'll have it on in the bed, and then I'll take it off, and then I'll start playing something, and it'll maybe play here, maybe play there. It's really hard to say. I'm just saying I'm one of those old people who can't handle technology, which is clearly where I am right now. Anyway, so Chris, didn't you say you were having a beverage tonight? I saw Chris likes to be like me and show his beer purchases, and he smartly purchased like 7 different beers, it looked like. Not all for tonight, maybe tomorrow, but not tonight. But I was intrigued to see because he was showing me like some Atlanta beers, and I'm like, no, dude, this stuff's available in our stores. I want to see some stuff, like a Bourbon County Stout. Like that's the big annual thing that comes out around Thanksgiving, and they only sell one version in Georgia because we have a limit on our alcohol quotient that is available. Moshiko. So what on earth is a Moshiko? I got to hear this. Rice Stout. Oh, so it's like is it actually like Japanese? Is it just a regular stout? No adjuncts, no flavoring, no Zach stuff, basically? If you sip it, it gets normal. I don't even know, would rice qualify as like gluten-free? Because I had a friend who found he was gluten intolerant, and he was the biggest Budweiser fan back in the day. And I don't even think he's gotten into the gluten-free beers, although I hear they've improved over time. But something like you want to go to something that's like consistently entertaining. And so I was listening to the podcast. It's called Shitpost, although they have the exclamation point in place of the I. Jared Holt, who's like a guy who covers right wing in the country, and I tried to get him on the show a couple times and never got a response. The beer equivalent of potato vodka. Anyway, they did an episode like post-election, which had all of the kind of right-wing freakouts, and I was wondering, all the people on the right who's kind of made their grift about being pro-Trump. Just think about the guy we all three saw at ReasonCon who won like Atheist of the Year and now is doing a daily live stream where he's wearing a Trump hat. I mean, what are they going to do now? Like, assuming the 500 lawsuits don't go through, and we actually get a quasi normal president going forward, what are they going to do? The people who, I mean, that's got to be a lot of the appeal of Trump is you can't, there's the thing called the bandwagon effect. Like if a football team does well, then a lot of people become fans of them. Like no one was a fan of the New England Patriots since they started winning Super Bowls in the early 2000s. And now there are a ton of people who became fans after they got good. So a lot of people jumped on the Trump thing because Trump won the presidency, and then they got to own the libs. There was, a neighbor down the road who had a "Make Liberals Cry Again" sign that went down really quickly after the election, like the day after. They're not going to stick with this thing if it's not winning. It's not making people cry anymore. It's like killing 3,000 Americans a day, but we clearly don't care about that anymore. I was just throwing away my excess wax. Sometimes you got to throw away the excess wax, right, everybody? I really would like to do an episode of the show where I talk to somebody about how a lot of sports teams, especially in the high school, college level, kind of indoctrinate their players to be big into Jesus. And that's why so many NFL players, especially punters, point to this guy when they score, and how being like super religious gets intertwined with being a football player or a player of a sports team that's really popular. It'd be a fun show for me. I don't know if it'd be fun for anybody else, but at this point, I'm just struggling asking people to be on the show. So you know what I'm saying. But I want to know from Chris. We definitely, that's an interesting question. We'll get to that in a second. So the next season of The Expanse is coming out in Amazon Prime in like a week or two. And I'm going to be like semi-employed at that part. So I might have to just run through that. Cats that like earwax. I don't know if I've had a cat lick the ears. The only cat phenomenon we're having is the fact that it's cold. And they tend to snuggle. And usually Skitty snuggles with Allison and Soy will snuggle, well, not really with me, but kind of on my side. And when it gets cold, the cats don't really care who it is. They just get on you. One issue we've had is, I don't know why I'm pointing. Soy doesn't like to pee in the litter box. And we were about to hire a cat psychologist to actually work through our cat's emotional issues that make him not pee. And he's starting to pee on the corner of our new floor in the kitchen, which is a big time problem. So we've been putting towels down. But if we ever can have people in our house again, we're clearly not going to want that. So we're going to have to figure out our cat's emotional issues. Only problem is recently I got let go at my job. So yeah, extras like beer. Well, that's an essential, right? Extras like a cat therapist are clearly on the out and out. But yeah, I was kind of wondering like weird quirks that people have with their cats. The thing with Soy is, for some reason, we had the same thing with our last two cats. One was like 5 pounds more than the other one. And we never know why. Soy is the one who pukes a lot. And we just got this new area rug, brand new, just had been rolled out, and he puked on it the next day. And I thought he was going to do the old catapult was going to be him. And it's really weird that he throws up, he pees everywhere, and he's the largest cat I've ever seen. And he will really only jump on me when I'm sitting on the stairs. He won't get on me for long when I'm in the bed, but he'll get on me when I'm on the stairs. And he really likes to get my attention, like when I'm in a work call. So I'm like, okay, after the call, let's hang out, let's talk. But yeah, part of the job is I get access to test accounts, which allows me to check out the premium channels, and I won't have them at the end of the month. So I really feel like I need to. We've had like the same food for our cats for so long that we might need to change that. That I feel like I need to watch as much premium channel stuff. Like the Wonder Woman movie is going to be on HBO Max on Christmas, so we'll clearly watch that. But we only watched the first episode of Good Lord Bird. I don't know, Chris, if you had downloaded that thing. I actually read the book, and it was a little too, like, the comic stuff wasn't quite working. But Ethan Hawke as John Brown, just in the trailer that I watched, was just so... I'm going for it, that I was like, I have to watch this. And I watched the first episode, and it wasn't really clicking for me. I know there's still like 7 to go, but there's still a bunch of potential shows to watch, but we still have Netflix, we still have Amazon Prime. I don't know. Sully's had indigestion. He's been one who likes to puke in the morning pretty much. It's not every day, but it's fairly often. And he just doesn't like peeing in the box. And I think we've tried having different. We had 2 boxes. We had different litter, and sometimes he will go. We actually had the box on the screened-in porch when the construction was going on in the kitchen, and he actually went in the box on the screened-in porch. But then once we moved him back inside, he was like, "Cool, I can pee on the floor again." Or I can pee in the corner in the man cave, or I can pee in the corner and almost get murdered in the kitchen, but I just don't know what to do. So I was putting down a towel, and now, yeah, exactly. It's weird. We don't watch like movies, but we'll watch a TV show. And just based on how the world has been going, we were just like, dramas are rough. We're watching the TV show Cougar Town for the second time. We're like on season 5. We're almost done. And we watched that entire show, 6 seasons of it, twice in like 4 months. Because it was like a 22-minute comedy, you can just crank out 2 to 3 episodes a night. And, you see things the second watching that you don't the first. That might be a fun thing to do, is to say, like, what TV shows would you like to watch again? Like, we have the entire Buffy the Vampire Slayer series, and I know Joss Whedon's had some issues, but we really loved this show. We watched it in the days where you could record an episode on VHS. Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Chris is calling it garbage? Ouch. I wonder if we watch it again, would we enjoy it again? I mean, the thing with Cougar Town is it was a regular 22 episode kind of season show, the first 2 seasons. And then it moved over to TBS, and it was like 15 episodes and 13 episodes. And you can go through that so quickly. The thing about The West Wing is, like, I watched, I think, the first episode, but then I realized there's like 6 seasons of like 24 episodes or 22 episodes. There's no way I'm ever getting through that. It's amazing how you see on shows that they, even like an 8-episode Netflix show, like, man, they really padded that. Like, I enjoyed watching The Queen's Gambit, and I think it was 9 episodes, but it could have been 6. Yeah, we saw that in the theater, the Joss Whedon Much Ado About Nothing. It's too bad he was much doing many of the female co-stars. But he's still an A-list director. Like, it was like it felt like a big thing when he did the Avengers. We're like, yeah, he finally made it, and now he's doing these DC movies, and it's like, ew. I guess eventually you're gonna say ew about a lot of people that you like. I don't know. I probably won't. The thing is, it's weird. Like when Allison and I first got together, and you get into a relationship, you feel like you got to watch everything together. And then there was a time where like one of us would like a show and the other one wouldn't, and it's like, oh, what do we do? But we found shows that one of us likes, the other one doesn't. Like she started watching Cougar Town, and like halfway through the first season, I'm like, all right, I'll watch an episode with you, and I started enjoying it. Like there will be shows where, especially like I've been watching Rick and Morty on HBO Max. No, that's not her show for her. Anything that's why The Expanse is something I'll watch by myself, because she doesn't really care if it's in space. If it's really like violent, probably not. It depends. But I have to like really consider if I want to watch a show by myself. Like I have to really, really want to watch the whole thing, and there's no way I'm going to finish. Even if I'm watching it like all day, every day, that I'm not going to finish West Wing. Although I hear that, oh gosh, yeah, Peaky Blinders. I watched season 1 and I stopped. I didn't get to season 2. It was a cool mix because I like shows that, I know, Friends. What are those? Shows that just combine things. Like Peaky Blinders, like set in the 1920s in England. And it's just interesting to see a show that's set in a totally different time that you cannot relate to. Just like a bunch of people wearing suits all the time, even though they only own one, and they work at a coal mine. And then they play like this 80s punk. But I think I had just seen so many kind of gangster shows that after you've seen enough of them, you kind of feel what's going to happen. But it was a good show. I mean, I know a lot of season 1. I mean, that's one thing about those British shows that I like, is they do like 6-episode seasons or 8-episode seasons, and America's finally figuring that out. Like, the Queen's Gambit. If you get a novel, it's nice to have like a 6 to 8 episode show that just does it, and you're done. Because if you go to the old school 22 episode method, it's just like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of stuff. There's an episode, a musical episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's like this. I think this line's mostly filler, and it's like, yeah, when you watch some episodes, you're like, oh, nothing actually happened in this episode. So, I mean, I'm excited about the next season of The Expanse. I mean, I've read all the books, and the way they kind of set things up that are going to happen, like things happened the last season, they're going to affect like 4 seasons in the future, is great. Yeah, the one show we really liked, because my wife is a thing for Idris Elba. I'm not afraid of that. Called Luther, and because Idris Elba became such a big TV star, depending on his availability, the show would be like a 2-hour episode, and that would be it. That would be your season. And really, Luther had like maybe 4 episodes at the most. Had a good, first season, nice serial killer thing. It was a good show. And you can watch it quickly. And with so much stuff out, like people were freaking out today because Disney Plus announced a bunch of new shows. And I only had Disney Plus for like a week or 2. We got to watch Hamilton, and I didn't even get through the first season of The Mandalorian, and I'd like to watch it again. And I was kind of looking forward to rewatching one of my favorite late 70s movies, The Black Hole, which is like Disney's attempt to do Star Wars, and it was not a very good movie, but I really enjoyed it. It had some really good actors, but it was just kind of cheesy, and it didn't really work, but I always liked it. I don't know, maybe it was like the underdog thing going, but yeah, I'm probably going to try to get through the rest of Good Lord Bird. I don't know. There's a bunch of, my wife tends to like sometimes like murder podcast type shows. We had the one where the wife of Patton Oswalt like followed the serial killer, and hey, she said she's only good for 10 more minutes. I mean, I've been going 40, so I might cut out fairly soon. But the show that was on HBO Max about the Golden State Killer, the guy who had, I can't remember what it was, 22 women, and he ended up getting caught, and he was a police officer. Hey, Chris, what do we say about police officers? Anyway, but she ended up dying like in the middle of covering it, and I don't think she had a really good relationship with substances. But it was, I don't know, it didn't quite, it was like her personal story and then the story of the killer, and it didn't quite, mesh. But it was interesting to watch it, even though it was another show that felt kind of, pushed out. But yeah, I didn't know if Amy was going to make it tonight because I thought it'd be interesting to talk about the weekly culture war freak out and Elliot Page. So what I saw, and I only see the surface level of these things on Twitter, was there was a Christian author who was mad that he didn't get as much attention and positive love as Elliot Page did for coming out as trans. He came out as a gay man who was suppressing his gay urges because he was a Christian. And I was like, this is not something, trying to compare someone who is trans to someone who is given into the far right craziness of Christianity. That's like, you can be gay, but you can't have sex with a man. Yeah. So Jeannie, is that the same case? Because I started listening to a podcast that was covering, there was another murder. There's just so many murder podcasts. It's insane. And it shows you how amazingly bad our justice system is right now. But we're kind of leaning into norms. We're like, bring back norms when the norms kind of suck. And the fact that one side can call the other side extremists, and then they're like, yeah, the guy who lost the presidential election, and by the way, lost the previous presidential election, he should still be president. I don't know how we got to the norm being this crazy grifter times 100, but that's where we are. But I thought it'd be fun, since Jeannie is on and she lives slightly north of where I am. Do you get a lot of humor out of us like freaking out? Because in the South, if it gets below 50, we are cold. I mean, we're talking about on work calls about people being cold, because even when it finally gets slightly warm around here, we just can't handle it. Like for me, when I try to get my 10,000 steps a day, it is tough for me to walk in place in front of my TV playing Dr. Mario and my NES Classic, because it's hard to do that for whatever it is, an hour and a half. Like, to be able to go outside like I have the last 2 days and be able to run for like 30 to 40 minutes is just so great, because it's actually like been warm, but it's really cold at night, and we don't like that so much in Georgia. Was it New Hampshire where like it was a Republican like Speaker of the House died of COVID like before he got sworn in? I mean, there's so many cases. Like, we weren't paying attention when it was 1,000 deaths a day, and now we're up to 3,000, which is like more than 9/11, more than Pearl Harbor every day, and it's not really getting any attention. And the thing is, like, I've had friends who've been sick but I haven't really gotten close with someone who's had someone die because of COVID. I feel like I've had stories of people who have caught it, but haven't, it hasn't caused them, major negative experiences because of it. But, oh my gosh. I mean, that is one thing you have to do that I haven't realized until recently is, occasionally you have to open the windows and get some fresh air because the two of us in the house and 2 cats, it gets a little stagnant after a while. My parents were convinced they got it, but it was like in January, so I'm pretty sure they were just sick. But at least they've gotten in on the be smart, and they're just amping up their Christmas decorations because they're not going anywhere. And, we had to watch a lot of my wife's family get together on Thanksgiving, and we're just still for Christmas. We're just staying here. We're not moving. I mean, it's okay to, leave your windows open for 30 minutes a day when it's at least a little bit warm. Because it takes a while for the outside to match the inside. And the cats love to get on the screened-in porch and have a good time. So, now that we've finished the new project in the kitchen, I have to consider what, actually my number one project now is finding a new job. I did have an interview a couple days ago, yesterday. And it was weird because I haven't done one in a while. And I'm like, oh God, how's it going to go? Because I just don't like being interviewed. Being on other shows has been tough because I'm like, oh shit, I have to talk? I like it when the guest talks. But you know what? After all this time, I think I'm okay at it. I BS'd, I'd say BS'd, but it's just like using your own experience and looking at the job and going, well, here's my past, here's my present, here's my future. And the future is you. So it was a good start. Probably won't lead anywhere. Last year I had the fortune of losing a job and then having my old company reach out to me almost at the same time and offer me a job without me having to really work for it. But the thing was, the job itself wasn't the greatest match for my history. So like Chris's meh. So why don't we go ahead and call it a night? Still have some beer, and nobody wants to hear me talk for this long. I have some people I could reach out to, and next week maybe Amy and Chris, throw Amy a beer or two, and we could do a show. So if you want to support the show, it's really weird because I say, hey, be like Freethinker 215, Alan Marks, Human, Chris, Larry, Daryl, and the other Daryl, and go to patreon.com/Sacrilege, even though I just do slightly padded episodes for Patreons, and I haven't been charging you. And I'm not going to be one of those people who go, I'm going to make a living off my podcast, because that's not going to happen. It's going to be a few extra bucks at best. Maybe I'll start charging again, but not. Possibly next week, Chris. We'll talk. Call me. So, follow me on Twitter, like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook. I will try to post there more often. Send all mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. And if you don't want to hear me talking constantly for 45 minutes a week, tell me who I should invite in the show, and I might invite them, and they may even agree to it. So, thank you to, beer money. Thank you to Jeannie and Chris for being in the chat room. And until then, we'll continue the one-sided conversation because, oddly, I seem to be enjoying it. So you say good night and good luck. So we'll go with that, and I will hit the end button.